some consensus with stuff. Okay, one second. So let's start with trying to come to a consensus, and this might be a big, broad topic to have to get narrowed down to reach equal footing, but with the existence of racism in America and the existence of the federal government, what role do they have in combating racism in any form, pragmatically and like legislatively, like not just words? What actual role does the government have in racial disputes among the population?
Oof.
And it can be however little or big of a consensus, but just like the church issue, racism, where's the line there?
I guess for me, the difference there between like I guess religious injustices or like protecting religious freedoms and protecting like racial minorities is the difference in like ability to, I guess, live without that interfering in your life. Like I can live my entire life without like religion coming up whatsoever, but like I can't walk outside without people knowing I'm black. And I think that's kind of the distinction there. As far as like what the government should do about racial disputes, like I'm a little more fuzzy on what they should do about racial disputes and more clear on like what they should do about issues that have been systemically impacted by racism. I think when you look at things, whether that's policing or housing or education or access to food or all of these things, I think one of the things I've learned a little bit more about kind of during, or I guess been able to convince more of my white friends about over this election is the existence of like you can't combat racism with race neutral policy. Like you have to combat racism with actively anti-racist policy, because otherwise like the people who stand to benefit from like any loopholes that are in that system are going to exploit them, and most often those who are going to be exploited are African American men. And that just doesn't sit right with me. I guess the role in the government to do something about that, similar to where I land on religion, is as secular and removed as it can be, but also as like humane and impartial, and I guess reinforcing the individual liberties of all people is kind of the role I see them playing. And so like your ability to be yourself and express yourself culturally, artistically, fashionably, your job choices, your freedom of speech, all of those things that should be protected for all Americans should be protected when it comes to things regarding being discriminated against because of your identity, whether that's race or something else.
My thoughts on the idea of racism, I think like, a lot of times in some everything things are overblown in the media, and the problem of racism, we all know that racism and it exists. Like, in some everything, I think like, the degree that is able to affect your life though is like where I feel like, that you have the ability to make choices. So like the way I feel like, and stuff of an employer's racist and stuff and everything, it's the best option and stuff and everything would be to be able to live in a country that has opportunities and stuff and everything, so you don't have to be tied to that job. I don't know, like, and stuff of where this would fall, if this is more of a libertarian view, but I feel like, a lot of the government agencies and stuff and everything, they clearly show that they don't work, and I'm in favor of having them abolished, such as the Office of Civil Rights and the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. I don't feel that those are helpful specifically to African American men. I think like, and stuff and everything, that a lot of these organizations are actually taking taxpayer money and not really doing like, what they're alleging to do. And I feel like, that the best way, like, and stuff and everything to combat that is like by creating jobs and opportunities and stuff and everything, so people can like, start their own businesses and don't have to rely on, any one employer, or like, be subject to, focus on, the economic policies and stuff and everything, so they can have like, and stuff a future. So like, and stuff, they can create their own destiny. So
I guess you started off with the example of like having a racist employer, and their solution to that was to create more jobs. I don't how does that solve for that? Like if there are just more jobs full of racist people who are going to hire me in an uncomfortable
Well,
situation.
I mean, like you're assuming, like you know what I mean, except that all of the people would be racist, but like everybody's not racist. I mean,
I
like you know,
agree with that. I'm
I'm
assuming
sure,
some
like let's say,
percentage of all new employees
listen
are
to this.
racist. Yes.
So like you know what I mean, and stuff and everything. Like if you like you know what I mean, and stuff and everything, like work, like you know what I mean, and stuff at your job, and you like you know what I mean, and stuff find yourself and stuff and everything subject to like you know what I mean, and stuff racist, like you know behavior, you know what I mean, where like you know what I mean, and stuff and everything. They clearly don't like you not because of your work performance, but because of the color of your skin. I think the best like you know what I mean solution to that problem is there being enough available jobs in the economy, so like you know what I mean and stuff, you don't have to stay at that employer. You're not afraid, like you know what I mean and stuff. You don't have to go. You have a choice in the matter.
So what
like
if
you
the
know what I mean, and stuff.
industry you're in is racist? So like so
I
say,
mean,
say you work at Walmart, right? And like
Right.
you feel like you're being treated somewhat racially tinged by your direct superiors. You're like, fuck this, there's other jobs in the retail industry currently in existence. I'm gonna go work at Target. Then you go work at Target and you find out they kind of implement these same racist policies. So you leave there and you go work for Amazon. And you realize it's the same kind of thing over there. Maybe it's not individual people being racist, but maybe it's just across the board. Some people, specifically people who don't look like you, don't value people like you. Is that something we can just change by creating more jobs?
I mean, do you think that's the case? Like you and me and stuff, and everything, like realistically, like the scenario that you described and stuff, and everything. Like I would imagine, like you and me and stuff, and everything, like the experiences of like work, because I've worked at a lot of the places you just named at one point in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So like you and me and stuff, and everything. Like if I like you know, for instance, like I worked at a Target and stuff, and everything, where I was on the overnight shift and stuff, and everything. This is like my first job out of college, and like you and me and stuff, and everything. The manager, he was Hispanic and stuff and everything. He didn't like me because like my dad, like you were saying, got me the job. And like you and me and stuff, he felt like you and me and stuff and everything, like, you know, he could kind of like harass me or give me a hard time. Was that racist? Like you and me, because he's a different race, like you know, he's a minority. Like you know,
doesn't like nepotism.
Yeah, right. So like you and me and stuff and everything, like so like you know what I mean and stuff and everything, like but like you and me and stuff and everything, like I stayed at that job and I'm experiencing harassment, right? Like you and me and stuff, regardless, like you and me and stuff, everything. Like
you
it's
don't
not.
think the government should do anything about that? Like you shouldn't be able to report that to like a Better Business Bureau or any sort of government agency?
I mean, I think like
prosecute that?
I think to be honest and stuff, everything, like you and me and stuff, everything, it's a waste of time. I think like you and me and stuff, everything, the individual and like the business and stuff, everything, both would be better served and stuff, everything by like you.
So
and
this
me
gets
and
back to
everything.
the whole like black isolationism thing we were talking about earlier. Though. Like, the solution to that is then like we just don't do business with racist, queer people don't do business with churches, and so on and so on.
I don't think so because like you know, to be honest and stuff, everything. I've worked with people and stuff, and everything who I think like were knowingly racist, and like they didn't treat me poorly. Like you know what I'm saying, in the job position and stuff, everything. People have their views, like you know what I mean, and stuff, everything. I'm not saying like you know, but I'm talking about like you know what I mean and stuff, everything. Like working on a job and experiencing racism within the job, like you know what I mean, and stuff, everything. Like you know, like you know, for instance, I'll give you a specific instance. Now in a situation and stuff, everything like it would be like I feel like the government should be in control of, and like so. You've seen like you know what I mean and stuff, everything, things on the news and stuff, everything where like people's hair, like you know African Americans, like you know what I mean and stuff, and like people were fired, like how their hair grows naturally out of their scalp, like you know what I mean and stuff, like situations and stuff like that. There should be like you know government intervention to say like you know what I mean and stuff that's not okay, like you know what I mean and stuff, everything, because like that is how our hair grows. But like you know what I mean and stuff, everything, like for the government to intervene, like you know what I mean and stuff, everything, because like you know what I mean and stuff, everything, like your employer, like you know what I mean and stuff, everything, who like you know is
discriminate against you because of your race. That's exactly what you just described. Like yeah, the government should intervene. We
no,
both agree that.
I think like I think like you know what I mean and stuff, like in instances like you'd have to describe the situation. Like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything. I'm saying, like, you know what I mean, you're being harassed, like you were saying, specifically just for the color of your skin and stuff, everything. That employer does not value you because, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything. You're African American. I think, like, when you see there, why would you want to work there? Why would you want to continue? Like, so wouldn't it be better, like, you know what I mean, if there was, like, other job opportunities and stuff, everything created by a great economy, so you have options. Sure. And that's, like, you know what I mean, it's my belief about that matter.
That's fair. I guess what I'm saying is, like, even if you accept that to be the solution, then what do you do about all the racist employers? We just like let them slide because we don't want to work there?
I mean,
like the government shouldn't do anything about that?
I don't believe, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything is the government's place, really, like, you know what I'm saying, to do outside of, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything, like, if they are discriminating against you because of, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything.
So for instance, say we don't, company A, we don't discriminate at all. We'll hire everybody equally, right? We hire everybody except that we have 20 employees, 10 of them are full-time, 10 of them are part-time, and all the part-time employees are black employees, 5 of which want to be full-time, but we won't give them the hours to be full-time.
I mean,
what do you think should happen in that situation?
I think in that situation and stuff, everything, if you're African American, you should leave that position and look for a better opportunity.
And nothing should happen to that company. In the meantime, the government should provide you no support while you look for a new job.
I don't think, like, you know what I mean, and some government support should be necessary. I think that if there are ample
so if you're barely making enough money to live, how do you leave your job and go look for some other job?
If there's ample opportunities in the economy,
there will never be that level of opportunity that everybody can just quit their job at will and go get another job.
I disagree, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything. I believe, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, that's not true. And the reason that there aren't, like, you know what I'm saying, those opportunities and stuff, everything, is because
of the economy for that to be true.
And if we got rid of all of the illegal immigrants like Trump is trying to do, there would be a surplus of jobs.
Of jobs that nobody wants to work. That's a fact.
I don't think that's true. Like, you know, a lot of these.
So you would leave your racist target job to go pick oranges in a field.
Like you're saying,
what are you talking about?
You're talking about, like, Walmart doesn't hire illegal immigrants. I know for a fact they do. I know for a fact, like, you and me and stuff, that a number the companies like Target and stuff, everything, like, they hire, like, you know what I'm saying, illegal immigrants. So these are jobs as well. McDonald's, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything, which is a job and stuff, everything, overrun with illegal immigrants. A number of fast food employers, retail jobs and stuff, everything are, like, you know, and their employees are illegal immigrants. That's a fact. Like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything, like, you know, so
what?
I mean, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything. That's why there's that's why there's not.
So your solution is not kick out the immigrants.
That's not. I'm not saying kick out the immigrants. If you're not coming here, you should be here legally, or you should not be able to work. Like, you know what I mean, you're taking jobs from U.S. citizens and stuff, everything. Basically, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything. And you came here illegally. You have no right to be here because you're not here legally. I have no problem with immigrants, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, if you come here legally. But it's like the illegal immigrants who are taking the jobs and stuff, everything, and that's why there's not
the laws that dictate who's here legally and who isn't aren't racist at all, and the government shouldn't address any of the racial disparities in those either. Nor should they do anything about the conditions that create mass migration, like our war-torn policy all throughout the Middle East and throughout Latin America. But I'm just trying to understand where you're coming from, my man. So what you're trying to tell me is, like, the illegal immigrants are really the inhibitors, like. We could solve racism and nobody would have to work for a racist boss if only we got rid of all the illegal immigrants who are literally only here because we tore apart their countries and are also fellow brown people who are discriminated.
I mean, how do we tear apart Mexico? Like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything. Like, to be honest, like, what do we do?
How do we tear apart Mexico?
Yeah, what do we do? Like, you create the condition, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything that Mexico.
We funded a cocaine regime in Nicaragua who went to war with them for 15 years. What are you talking about? We went down there and we funded cartels all throughout Mexico and tore apart communities for decades.
Who's we?
The U.S. government, the U.S. military, the CIA. Who's the we you're talking about?
I mean, like, you know what I mean, instead of everything, like, that, like, you know what I mean, instead of everything, like, I
look at what's happening in Brazil. Look at what's happening in Venezuela. Look at what happened in Cuba. All of these had U.S. All of these had U.S. military interventions. All of them had the U.S. government intervene. You don't see any correlation there.
I think you're drawing, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, huge, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, conclusions and stuff, and everything. Like, I don't think that necessarily, like,
between overthrowing a government, there being destabilization, those people fleeing for a more stable environment such as America, you don't think there's any correlation there?
I mean, I think, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, and everything, like, there is, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, a correlation to some point, but, like, I mean, the extent that you're trying to draw that connection that the United States government is to blame, I think, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, that's
you're trying to draw the connection that those people who immigrated to America fleeing some circumstances that were literally life or death for them are to blame for racism. That's how we got here.
No. I'm not blaming them for racism. I'm blaming them.
So they're the inhibitor to us solving racism.
No. I'm explaining, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, why there aren't ample jobs in the economy. Like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything.
You just told me an hour ago that we're having the most successful economy we've ever had. There's more jobs than ever. What's the problem?
don't you think it would be more successful if there weren't illegal immigrants who were taking up, like, you know what I mean? Like, let's say, like, you know what I'm saying?
Do I think the country would be more successful if we didn't have illegal immigrants who are taking up jobs that they're getting paid below minimum wage for?
That's not
Americans
true,
aren't
though,
taking.
all the time and stuff and everything. There's a lot of jobs and stuff and everything that illegal immigrants have, like, you know what I mean, and stuff that are not minimum wage jobs, like, you know what I mean, and stuff and everything from that they've taken jobs.
What
from
illegal
veterans
immigrants do you know
or-
making $100,000 a year?
I mean, I can't name, like, you know what I'm saying, illegal immigrants that are making hundreds.
Well, you want them out of the country?
Yeah.
Name them. We'll get them out of the country. We're pointing the ice right now. Who are they? Who are these people? Who are the
I
ones
don't
who are
know.
making $60,000 a year? Point them out. Because all the illegal immigrants I know are like struggling to make sure that they can, you know, their kids can be raised and will be healthy, that they have enough money to maybe keep a roof over their head and send some money back to their families who are in war-torn countries. I don't. Do I personally have a problem with them? Do I think those are the people taking jobs away from hardworking Black Americans? No, not whatsoever.
I don't personally have a problem with them. I think, like, you know,
So it seems like it, my guy.
no, like, I don't have a personal problem with them at all. But, like, you know what I mean, and stuff and everything, I'm highlighting.
You just
like,
want
you know
them
what I
out of
mean,
the
and
country.
stuff, like, you know what I mean, and stuff. You're making it seem like yes, I think, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, they should be here legally.
Okay.
Like, you know what I mean, and stuff and everything. Like, number one, like, you know what I mean, and stuff and everything. Like, the way I came into this country, like, you know what I mean, and stuff and everything, I was legally. Like, you know what I mean, and stuff and everything.
Where
Like,
do you
you,
immigrate from?
like, you know what I'm saying. You mean ancestrally, or, like, you know
No,
what I
I'm
mean?
saying, where did you personally immigrate from?
I didn't immigrate from anywhere.
So of course you came in.
Yeah.
You were fucking born here.
Yeah,
You didn't come here from
exactly.
anywhere.
Exactly. That's my point. Like, you know what I mean?
So
That's
that
the
you
very
being
thing.
born here makes you special.
It doesn't make me special, but
Makes
it
you more
makes me a
special than
United
anyone
States
else who
citizen.
wants to come
It makes
to
me a
different
United States citizen, and, like, you know what I mean, and
Wait,
stuff
and
and
some of those
everything.
people you call are here on
People who are coming here illegally are taking up opportunity and stuff and everything for people, like, you know what I mean, and stuff and everything that look like me or you. There's gonna be opportunity for me regardless at this point, but there's people in my community and stuff and everything who can't work, like, you know what I mean, and stuff and everything, because there's illegal immigrants. Like, let's say
That's
I grew
not
up.
true.
It's 100% true.
The reason
Listen,
they can't work is
listen.
because of systemic racism and
No. I mean, how is it systemic racism and stuff and everything at the McDonald's down the street from where I grew up and stuff and everything that employs nothing but illegal immigrants? That, like, you know what I mean, and stuff and everything that won't hire, like, you know what I'm saying, African American males. Like, you know what I mean, and stuff. How's that systemic racism and stuff and everything when it's like it's
systemic racism because we're 3 generations in and those people still need a fast food job to survive because we haven't allowed them to achieve anything. We've kept them in debt. We've kept them away from home ownership. We've kept them chasing after an education that was going to be meaningless later on. And so now they have $100,000 in student debt. They have 3 kids because of the abortion crisis that we talked about earlier, that we're just telling everybody they need to get an abortion now. And then back home at their churches, they're telling them that they're fucking sinners. So they come home and they don't want to do that. So now they got 3 kids that got $100,000 in student debt. They need a job at the fucking racist McDonald's to be able to make ends meet. That's how.
I mean, I don't think.
But yeah, the guy who owns that
I don't know
McDonald's,
that's true. It's like,
he
you know
might
what I
just
mean,
be
it's
employing
everything.
some illegal immigrants. I'm not going to take that away from you. But that ain't the reason that those people don't have jobs.
I think
That's not the reason those people aren't successful. It's because the illegal immigrant fucking washing dishes at McDonald's. No.
it hurts. It hurts the African American community the most. Like, you know what I mean, and stuff and everything. It is part of the reason. You could say, like, you know what I mean, it's not. If the jobs, you can't get the jobs in your own community, and illegal immigrants are able to get jobs. Don't you think, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, like, you know what I mean, and stuff and everything. Me, for instance, right? Like, you know what I mean, and stuff and everything. After I graduate from college and stuff and everything, I want to live and work in my community. So I go back home and stuff and everything. And I apply for positions, but I can't, like, you know what I mean, and stuff and everything. Let's say, like, I go to McDonald's.
What an illegal immigrant took from you.
A number of times. I'm going to Walmart and I got.
So you took your college degree and you went to go work at Walmart. You lost out your job to an illegal immigrant.
Yes.
Boy, I do resumes on the side, my guy. I can help out. Like, you must look like shit on paper. I don't know.
No, it's nothing about my resume. Like, you know what I mean? I'm telling
so
you.
with a college
about,
degree and experience and working in an American company, you lost out of your job to somebody who can barely speak the language and is here illegally with a fake SSI card.
Yeah.
And you're telling me that's their fault?
The whose fault?
This illegal immigrant.
Yeah, I believe.
What
like,
happened to
you know
putting stuff up with your bootstraps, my guy?
like, you know what I mean?
Seems like you should be able to compete for that job.
And stuff and everything. So you're telling me and stuff and everything I wasn't qualified for the position, like, you know what I'm saying?
Sounds
It's
like you
like
must have
you-
did a shit job interviewing.
No, it wasn't like, you know what I mean, and stuff and everything. Like, actually, like, you know what I mean, and stuff and everything. I showed up at the time that they told me and stuff and everything for the particular interview. I was talking to the gentleman and stuff and everything, and he told me, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, that he was a legal immigrant. And, like, you know what I mean, and stuff and everything. The hiring manager came out, like, you know what I mean, and stuff and everything, and they said basically, like, you know what I mean, we're not gonna hire you for this job and stuff and everything. we're going to go with him. Like, they didn't even interview me and stuff and everything. I actually, like, you know what I'm saying, and stuff and everything, needed the job. Like, you know what I mean, and stuff, this was years ago, like, you know what I mean, before I even had my kids and stuff and everything in Atlanta. And like, you know what I mean, and stuff and everything, I was really upset about it. And like, you know what I mean, I went and like, you know what I mean, and stuff and everything, I filed a complaint with, like, you know, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission and stuff and everything about this, because like, you know what I mean, and stuff and everything, like, I do, like, you know what I mean, and stuff and everything, as a veteran, as like, you know what I'm saying, and stuff and everything, like, you know, a college graduate and stuff and everything, and I cannot get a job at Walmart, like, you know what I mean, and stuff and everything, that I'm trying to start, like, you know what I'm saying, a life, like, you know what I'm saying, for my family and stuff and everything, and there's an illegal immigrant that's getting a job, like, you know what I'm saying, over me, like, you know what I'm saying, I just don't think that's right. And like, you know what I mean, and stuff, I think, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, that is an issue. And like, that's why, like, one of the reasons I support Trump, because like, you know what I mean, and stuff, you do research and stuff, everything you see, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything. A lot of people say, like, you know, all the time and stuff, everything, this rhetoric that they're taking the jobs and stuff that nobody wants and stuff, everything. I understand, like, there are jobs and stuff, everything that they're probably taking and stuff, but like, a lot of the jobs they're taking are jobs and stuff, everything in African American communities, specifically, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything. Like, I remember, like, you know what I'm saying, being at home, like, you know what I'm saying, and stuff, everything, and wanting to, like, you know what I'm saying, be able to work, like, you know, so I went, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, to Manpower, you know what I mean, and stuff. There's 100 illegal immigrants out there, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything. So, like, this is why, like, you know what I'm saying, people in my community and stuff, everything, like, turn to selling drugs, because, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, there are no job opportunities, like, where I lived in Chicago, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything. There's nowhere, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything, even with, like,
because of the presence of illegal immigrants.
Yes, I think that's a big part of it. Yes, I do. I know for a fact it is. It's not just that alone. There's other factors at work, but that's one of the biggest issues. Yes. If you took away illegal immigrants, there would be a number of jobs available, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, for African American males in my city. And if you look at the city of Chicago, it has one of the lowest rates of employment for African American males. Like, you know what I'm saying, and stuff, everything in the country, like, across the board. Like, you know what I'm saying, I think there's like something like
you don't
60.
think that has to do anything to do with institutional racism, locking up the large percentage of African American males before they're 25 and how hard it is to get a job with a criminal, especially a felony conviction on your record?
I believe, like, you know what I mean,
or the separation of black male from the family, like you alluded to earlier, or any of these things that are institutional and have absolutely nothing to do with illegal immigrants.
All of those are important issues, but I feel like it's perpetuated by, like, illegal immigration. Illegal immigration is what's hurting our community the most. So if you solve that core issue right there, if there were no illegal immigrants in where I grew up, specifically in Chicago, Illinois, there would be plenty of job opportunities for young African American males. It would. It's not like, you know what I'm saying, and stuff, everything, like, it's not a question, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything. I know that to be true, and it's like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything. You talk about, like, you know what I mean, as far as
based on the fact that somebody turned you down for an interview.
No, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything. Like, I know, like, you know what I'm saying, based on the research and statistics and stuff, everything. There's 40,000 illegal immigrants that come to this country today. You know, there's people and stuff, everything, who legally immigrated to this country that are receiving SSI benefits. That are not citizens of the United States, that are receiving, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything. That's one of the biggest issues I have with the Democratic Party. Is, like, you know what I mean, and stuff. The reason they want these people and stuff, everything, to be over here is so they can vote and they can control the election outcomes. That's it. Because, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything.
Illegally as a citizen, they can't vote.
If they want to give you an ID, like, you know what I'm saying, and you're a legal immigrant, what's to stop you from voting? If they want to give you ID, right? That's what, like, you know what I'm saying, like, states like New York.
Of this voter fraud have they done?
There's been a lot. There's been a number.
42 in the 2016 election.
There's been a number. I think, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything. Like, if you give people, like, you know what I'm saying, IDs and stuff, everything, they can vote. Like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything. Like, there what's to stop you from voting if you have an ID? Because in Massachusetts, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, what do you need to show to be able to vote?
I do.
Exactly. So what's to stop you if you're a legal immigrant and they're giving you an ID to be able to vote, to influence the election? That's the only reason why Democrats and stuff, everything, are arguing this. Like, you know what I mean, and stuff, 40,000 people and stuff every day come into this country illegally. That's enough to start a small town. Like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything. It's a huge problem. That's a huge reason why there are jobs available and stuff, everything, in Chicago, Illinois, where I'm from, in the South Side. So,
if we can pivot from that, because I would say that is like a current, no matter where you fall opinion-wise, that's the current sin of America, whereas they call slavery the original sin. Is it possible for the U.S. to fully heal from slavery in terms of it is just a, can we resign it to the past where it doesn't have repercussions?
According to my mayor, we already did.
Well, that's
it's on the past. There's no more institutional racism. Thank God.
How do we heal from slavery fully to where it's just history? Or if we have, when was that? Like when was the button put on Reconstruction, whatever you want to call it? How do we do it, or when did we do it?
And then also the topic from lunch when we started talking about it is, I know there was talk about racism with police and driving. I know we started talking about that, and then I think you were saying that the option for that would be to you drive less now, right? And then you live more because of that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that in line with, can you repeat your question one more time?
Yeah, how do we fully heal from slavery? What is there to do? How does that happen to where it's just a chapter in the history book and it's not bearing current repercussions? Or if we've already done that, when did that take place? How did that resolution take place?
I hope we're in agreement that that hasn't taken place yet. Yes?
No. I mean, I think it has. Like, I think like there has been a healing from
Were
slavery.
you serious?
Yeah, I'm dead serious. I believe that.
What the fuck?
The evidence is when Barack Obama was elected president of the United States. I think that's a perfect example and stuff. Everything that, like, being African American in this country and stuff. Everything, if you make the right choices and you work hard, you get to the highest office in the country. And I think that's a perfect example. I think like a lot of times and stuff. Everything there's I'm not saying that racism doesn't exist or they even and stuff like institutional racism isn't a problem in this country, but like I believe and stuff that you have like control of your own destiny and you don't have to have and stuff a victim mentality or a victim mindset, that you can take control of your destiny with your choices and and reach and stuff the highest levels of success. Nobody can stop you from succeeding in this country.
Plenty of people can stop you. That's the problem. If Barack Obama gets pulled over one time on his way smoking a joint on his way back from class in college, he's dead.
He's dead. That's a little bit of
I've had guns drawn on me by 3 different police in 3 different situations. All I need to do is move the wrong way. Thank God my fucking father trained me the right way. I'd be dead.
I mean, I understand. Like, I've had the guns pulled on me by police officers too, but like,
and that was warranted in your eyes. That was fine.
I mean, I think like
that wasn't a residual effect of slavery, the slave catcher position, which evolved into policing.
You know what? Like, and stuff. I look at it different. Like, my dad was a police officer and stuff. And everything. I know, like, and stuff. And everything. Sometimes and stuff. And everything. Like, in certain instances and stuff, it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with me personally. They're just trying to make sure that they go home safely to their family. Like, and stuff and everything. I've had guns drawn on me and stuff and everything where I felt like it wasn't necessarily, you're looking at it like.
So you're okay with prioritizing somebody else going home safely to their family?
No.
Going home safely to your family.
It's
you're okay with it you're happy to say the book is closed on the residual effects of slavery.
I don't think that is a residual effect of slavery, and stuff, everything, to be honest. I think, and stuff, that's a difficult job.
Fearful of black men?
I think, and stuff, everything, that it doesn't necessarily draw into the fact that I'm black all the time. I don't think,
you just told me that that if you go out driving your car doing nothing
that's
wrong,
true.
You are more likely to get pulled over because you are black.
Yes,
that's because you are black.
That's a fact. Statistics and stuff will prove that.
Okay.
And stuff, everything.
So what are you talking about?
No, but and stuff, everything. I'm saying in those particular instances where police officers are drawing guns on me, I don't think that necessarily falls into the fact that I'm saying I'm African American.
That's why you got pulled over.
No. I'm not saying so the instances and stuff and everything, I wasn't driving, and stuff and everything, but that doesn't have and stuff. If police officers are responding to a 911 call and and stuff, they see somebody who and stuff, yes, the description and stuff and everything, I'm black, regardless and stuff and everything, if I did it or if I didn't do it, it doesn't have and stuff anything to do with my race at that particular point. Now and stuff, getting driven, driving, getting pulled over while I'm black, that's something totally different. I feel and stuff and everything, they're pulling me over and stuff and everything specifically over based on a profile or a statistic. And stuff, for instance, this past week.
So long as they had a description of somebody who looked vaguely like you, who might have done a crime somewhere, then you completely understand that that's valid.
That's not even true. I can't even say like you know what I'm saying necessarily how
You just
valid.
said that. You said it was fine for them to have guns on you
I-
because you matched the description or
I
something.
have a lot of leeway with police because I believe, like you know what I'm saying, it's a difficult job. I think, like you know what I mean, and stuff, everything, like a lot of instances and stuff, everything that they are, like you know what I'm saying, necessarily not responding, like you know what I mean, and stuff, everything, like based on your race. Like most of the police I've interacted with have been genuinely nice people. Even like you know on the police officers and stuff and everything that pulled me over and stuff and everything, or like you know drew guns on me and stuff and everything. Like after they realize the situation. So I just think it's important to treat those situations with respect. I think a lot of times and stuff and
That's
everything
really
you look.
respectful, not putting a gun in my face when I haven't done shit.
I understand. How do they know that you haven't done things or you're not like a dangerous
saying
criminal?
I'm not doing shit.
I mean, I understand that, but like you know what I mean and stuff and everything. So you felt that was like just racism. That was just like, you know, those police officers just racist that pulled you over. That's what you.
I don't know any of my white friends that get the guns drawn on when they get pulled over for a traffic stop.
Yeah, I've had white friends who have had guns pulled on them too. Like you know what I mean and stuff and everything. Like I think like that's across the board. Like most, if you like statistically,
you think most people get pulled over have guns drawn?
Statistically, more white people have been shot by the police and stuff and everything than black people.
Yeah, statistically, there's also 6 times as many white people in the country. So if we want to talk raw numbers, obviously anything that pertains to white people is going to be more than black people. Statistically, white people commit more crimes too.
I just believe that, like you know what I mean, and everything, that police officers like have a difficult job. Not necessarily do I believe, like you know what I mean, and everything, that there are racist police officers, of course, and stuff and everything. But like you know, for me to
and you think that has no correlation to the history of slavery?
I don't think that it does. Like
you don't
like,
think white nationalism in its American sense has any correlation to slavery as the foundation of our country?
I see how you could draw that conclusion, but like I'm talking specifically to the idea of policing, like you know what I mean, and stuff and everything. I'm not saying like you know I can't take an incident where a white police officer pulls a gun on me and say that like it necessarily correlates to slavery. Like you know what I mean and stuff. I think that's
I'm saying there are plenty of factors there, but what I'm saying is the reason he pulls you over more often because you're black, the reason he gets more scared because
but you acted like every single time that I get pulled over is by the same police officer. That's a different person. How do I know, like you know what I mean, except the white police officer and stuff, everything that like pulls me over, like you know what I mean, isn't like you know what I'm saying on the weekend a civil rights activist. You know what I mean?
I don't disagree with you. There's plenty of terrible ones too. That's the proof of the existence of the legacy of slavery. There are a bunch of racist cops who signed up to be cops exclusively so they could go hunt black people.
I don't think that's true at all. Like I really don't. I believe like you know what I mean and stuff and everything. You're talking about a very small percentage of like you know what I mean and stuff police officers. Like you know what I mean and stuff. Does it exist? Yes.
So
like,
there's just a few bad apples, but we hear about them every single day.
I don't think like that we hear about them every single day. I think the media, like you know what I mean.
I'm not talking about from the media, bro. I'm talking about from people I know. I hear about it all the time about people getting violent. Do you ever hear like you know what I mean and stuff and everything, positive stories about police officers? Sure.
Police officers
not as often.
Positively. I have like you know just as many. For every negative story I have about police officers, I have a positive one as well.
Right. And
like you know what I mean.
A cop going out and shooting hoops at some 8-year-old kid doesn't kind of counterbalance somebody taking somebody's life.
I mean,
those things aren't equal.
I could like instances and stuff and everything. Like I could tell you, like you know what I mean and stuff. One time and stuff, me and my wife got into an argument, like you know what I mean and stuff and everything. Like on the way from we went to Delaware, and we're on the way, like you know what I mean and stuff and everything in New Jersey and stuff. I got out of the car, she left, so I'm on the highway and stuff and everything, like in the middle of nowhere, stranded. State police officer pulls me over. He's like, "Hey." Like you know what I mean and stuff there. I didn't see your car back there. You stranded. I told him what happened. He said, "Hey, get in. I'll take you to the train station." Took me to the train station and stuff and everything. Like probably like you know what I'm saying, would have took me 2 hours to get there. You know what I mean and stuff and everything. And I was able to get home from there to get to Union Station in New York and catch it. That's a
police officer did his job. What a hero.
That's not his job and stuff and everything to be an Uber. Like I mean, I think like you know
to check on civilians who are walking the highway. Yeah, that's kind of their job.
I think that was you know, but that's a very positive thing and stuff and everything.
Sure. Like, what's that got to do with anything? No one said all cops are always bad.
That's how you're kind of like, you know what I mean?
No, what I'm trying to portray is that all cops are portrayed as being always good, and they're often bad.
No.
We give them a very long.
I'm not going to even say like often. Like you, I think that's unfair to say like you know what I mean that most. I think like you know what I mean and stuff and everything. The majority of the police officers, because I know a lot of people who like I went to high school with their police officers. mention the fact that my father was a police officer. I think like that most of the police officers I've met are good people and like, you know what I mean, and stuff, care about their families and stuff and everything. The police
You know who
officers,
cares about their families too? Plenty of racists. There's plenty of good people who have great families and go work on the fucking.
but you're making it seem like, you know what I'm saying, being a police officer and stuff and everything, there's a connection, like, you know what I'm saying, with being racist. I don't think that that's true. I think like, you know what I mean, and stuff and
That's
everything.
not what I'm trying to say.
You're making it seem,
grossly misrepresent what I'm
you're
saying.
making it seem like there's an abundant amount
Sure,
of
but hear me when I'm
racist.
saying this to you. There is an abundant amount of racist cops. That doesn't suggest that it's the majority of all cops, or that it's every cop ever to put on the uniform, or everybody to ever consider being a cop. It is to say that a lot of cops, a weird amount, in fact, an abhorrent amount, I would say, are in fact racist. We can tell that by things like the fact that they pull over black people more often, collectively, as an occupation, not individual police officers, many of whom I'm sure are fine. Collectively, on average, out of all of the police, they pull us over more often. They draw weapons on us more often. They participate in use of force more often. They arrest you and charge you for petty crimes more often.
I don't think that has to do with racism and stuff and everything. I think that honestly has to do with negative stereotypes perpetuated by the media.
What do you think negative stereotypes perpetuated by society based on your race are?
I don't think that necessarily.
Racism.
I don't think that necessarily makes you racism, especially if it's on a subconscious level.
Racism is not. Racism is not
if you look
personal,
at the
man.
news, if you look at the news all the time and stuff, everything they depict African American males in a derogatory way.
Sure,
like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything. So it's like you know,
racist too. I'm not saying that.
so it's like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything. It's like,
But that doesn't make the cop who murders people based on what he saw on fucking news last night any less racist.
I mean, I think like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything. It doesn't mean like, you know what I mean, and stuff, that a police officer is racist and stuff, everything because he pulls his weapon. I'll give you an example and stuff, everything. My uncle, he passed away and stuff, everything. He was a police officer and stuff, everything. So
He got
like,
shot by an angry black man.
listen. So he actually shot, like, you know what I'm saying, someone. He was like sent to like the projects and stuff, everything, like, you know, in like, you know, Chicago and stuff, everything, like, you know, a gang infested area, and like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything, yeah, and like, you know what I mean, and stuff. Basically, he, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything is like looking for a suspect. There's like somebody, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, like loitering around, like he's scared, draws his weapon and shoots him. Like, you know what I'm saying, kindest guy I knew, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything, like, you know, worked, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything, like, you know,
The kindest guy you knew shot somebody for lurking around nearby.
he was scared, like, you know what I'm saying, he was looking for, like,
So
you know
he
what I'm saying,
shouldn't
an
have
armed
fucking cop
suspect.
then.
I understand that, but like, you know what I mean, and stuff, I think like a lot of times and stuff, people, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, take jobs and stuff and everything for their families, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, they want
You
a better
the
life
one
and
who just
stuff
said
and
that you go get a
everything.
different job. They're not cut out for this. Go get a different job.
I mean, I think
Your
like,
pussy ass shouldn't be shooting people in the middle of the street because you're scared some fucking police rifles behind you.
nah, I mean, like, you know what I'm saying, and stuff, I don't think like necessarily like that is like, you know what I'm saying, is you're a pussy, like, you know what I'm saying, because you draw your weapon and like, you know what I mean, and stuff.
Because you got scared somebody walked nearby you and you shot him? That's pretty pussy, bro. I don't know about you. You shoot anyone lately?
Never shot anyone, no.
Okay. You ever get scared before?
Of course.
You ever get scared while you had a gun with you?
I don't carry a gun, so, but.
You own guns? I thought you said you own guns. I thought you said you own guns.
No. I said, like, you were saying and stuff and everything. Like, I've shot guns and stuff and everything. Like, I was in the military, but like, I've never.
Anyone ever scare you while you were at the range? Scare you while you were at training?
Yeah, like,
You
I
ever shoot
participated
anyone?
in training, like, you know what I mean, and stuff. No, like, you know what I mean, and stuff and everything. Like, mostly, like, when we did.
Funny how that works.
Yeah, but I understand, like, you know what I mean, and stuff and everything. I feel that, like, you know what I mean, and stuff. I think being a police officer is easy to criticize, like, you know what I mean, and stuff and everything, like the job and stuff and
It's
everything.
much
Like,
easier to make excuses for it.
I don't.
It's very hard to criticize, actually. Nobody
I don't
will take the
think so.
criticism validly.
I think, like, you know what I mean, and stuff.
That's why all these cops get away with everything they do. You just had cops that rape a 16-year-old in New York.
I think that's horrible. I actually, like, you know, I was actually talking with that particular girl I was trying to interview her for my YouTube channel. But, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, I think that's horrible. Like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything.
You're going to tell the cops are just bad apples and they don't represent cops?
Like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything. No, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything. I think in situations and stuff like that, I've seen, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, cops do and abuse their power, of course, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything. In situations like that, I'm sure, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything.
So cops, we can agree, some cops abuse their power. We can agree that most cops who abuse their power, statistically speaking, abuse it against black people. You don't see any correlation there.
I won't even say that mostly that you abuse it against black people. I don't think that's true. I think, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything. Like, I think more so it's an economic issue. I think, like, you know what I mean, and stuff, everything. They abuse it against poor people.
And you
Like,
think
you're
there's
saying
any
something
correlation
more so.
with why there's so many poor black people? That has nothing to do with institutional racism or the history of slavery either, I suppose.
So to shift it over real quick then,
Yeah, and I know there's this topic. I mean, it's hard to achieve a lot of discussion because it's fully packed, right?
Mhm.
So I think to achieve all the discussions and topics we have is will be difficult. But
Yeah.
I think we're gonna.
just for your half of it, not as many, because we got most of it. How would the U.S. heal from those scars of slavery? And also, not to explode it into a whole new thing, is that through reparations? Yes, no. How does that happen? But what would it take to resign it to history?
I'll answer the second part first. I don't know what the right answer on reparations will be long term. I think it is something that should be studied vigorously, and that we should look into running the numbers on and see if there's a pragmatic approach or not. I don't think anyone's ever done a robust enough study to decide whether or not that answer is a yes or a no answer yet. I do think the closest thing to it, you mentioned Cory Booker previously, his baby bonds proposal, essentially giving a bond to every baby who was born and scaling that based on their class level, their income, their generational wealth throughout their family, and a bunch of other factors, which tends to essentially give larger bonds to Black children because we've been systemically impoverished by racism for hundreds of years. I think that's a good first step that kind of helps balance the scales. I think kind of looking at the national solution of it, I don't think we're solving for racism anytime soon. I think the biggest part of it is admitting that we have our racism problem. I'm having a conversation with a fellow Black man who tells me racism is over in America. My mind is fucking blown by that.
I'm not saying that racism is over, but I feel like it's not as big of a problem as that people like you and me and stuff make it out to be. I think like you and me and stuff. What I'm saying is that like you and me and stuff, everything even in the face of that, we have enough opportunity in this country and stuff, everything that you could live the life that you want to live.
I hear where you're coming from. That I guess the part I want to make clear here is separating this idea. You create this binary between you are either a free person who has control of their own destiny, or you're living in a victim mindset. And that's not a binary choice. You can be a free person trying to achieve liberty and success as defined by your own personal values and still be inhibited in doing so by racism. You have to overcome those things to be able to achieve that. That is the problem. I am not a victim of those things because I am overcoming them. I'm beating those odds. I'm telling white supremacy to suck my dick while I walk right past it and go buy myself a house and get a college degree and do all the things they told me I could not do. But that does not mean that does not exist, and it does not make me a victim.
Was somebody really telling you who's the person that was really telling you? Like you were saying, is there actual people like you? I mean, they're
telling me that I could not succeed because I was Black?
Yeah.
Yes. Where the fuck did you grow up that there wasn't?
I like you and me and stuff, everything. Are
you serious?
No one ever told me that I couldn't succeed and stuff, everything. Honestly, because I was Black, you and me and stuff, everything. I've never heard that. You and me and stuff, everything. And I just you and saying stuff, everything. Honestly, a lot of people.
Nobody was ever surprised at your success based on you being Black. There's never a teacher who told you that you weren't going to go to a certain college or on a certain track or anything like that. None of these things ever happened. You just lived this blessed Black life where no white people ever told you weren't shit.
No,
I trade with you for a heartbeat. For all the shit you talk about Chicago Southside being so dangerous, that sounds lovely.
No, to be honest and stuff, everything. I felt I really most of the white people and stuff, everything I've met in my life have been very helpful to me. And you and me and stuff, everything an aspect of me encouraging me. People who of course there are people who were negative, but I didn't think it had anything to do with my race. I felt you and me and stuff, everything that it was personality wise, you and me and stuff. Necessarily, they're not a encouraging person, you and me and stuff, everything. It doesn't have anything to do necessarily with race. Have I experienced racism? Yes, but I felt
what was the racism you experienced? Because you seem to just dismiss a lot of other racist things that you have not experienced. So what was the racism you experienced?
Some racism, you and me and stuff, everything. Typical, you and me being an African American male type stuff, you and me and stuff, everything. When you go,
some of those things I consider typical, you apparently think are otherworldly. So figure out what you mean by typical.
I don't know. I'm just saying that my educational, I had very encouraging teachers and stuff, everything, and
no, I understand.
you know what I mean.
What
But
racism did you experience?
So you and me and stuff. I've gone to you and me in apartments where I qualified for, and you and me and stuff, everything. And they just didn't want a Black person to live there, clearly. Or you and me and stuff, everything. Like I remember like I went to go buy a car, like you were saying, at a car dealership, and like you know what I mean, so they didn't want to sell me the car. I ended up buying anyway. I just put like $8,000 down, like you know what I mean, and stuff and everything. So it's like you know what I mean, and stuff. It's just like,
And you don't find those to be indicative of systemic racism.
I think like you know what I mean, and stuff. I won't say that that's systemic racism. I mean like. I think like you know what I mean and stuff. Is that a widespread? Like if I went to another car dealership and stuff and everything,
Yes,
you know what I
talk
mean.
to
and
some other
stuff,
black people. We've all had that experience of going to a car dealership, them not wanting to sell you a car until you put double the amount they wanted as a down payment down. That's a very common experience across the entire country, across all brands of vehicles. Whether you're buying a Honda Civic or you're buying a Maserati, that's a very common black experience. And you're telling me those just happen to be instances of like personal behavior that have nothing to do with the history of racism in this country.
I mean, I think like you know what I mean and stuff and everything. Like you're putting words in my mouth, but what I'm saying specifically,
I'm not putting words in your mouth. I'm regurgitating
No,
what you just said.
that's
I'm
not
trying
what
to
I
get
said.
clarification.
What I'm saying is like you know what I mean. I don't feel like you know what I mean and stuff that those situations and stuff and everything display to me that's systemic racism. I believe like you know what I mean. Those would be isolated incidences and stuff and everything.
So those are isolated instances that hundreds of thousands of us all experience with nothing in common.
So like those particular instances and stuff and everything, like I see where you're coming from, but like I just don't believe in like being a victim. I feel like you know what I mean and stuff and
And
everything.
that's what I'm saying. That's a false choice. I'm not saying I'm not saying you have to succumb to a victim mentality to admit that like there are people attempting to victimize you by doing things like overcharging you by 50% for your down payment on a car, which is an economic victimization based on your race. That is systemic racism.
I can agree with you on that. Like you know what I mean and stuff and everything. I can agree with you on that.
And we'll button up.
Woo! Wow. Okay.
Good.
Are you gonna stop that?
Yeah, I just
Okay.